Hi everybody, my name is Bob Saunders, and a friend of mine asked me if I would explain what happens as and when you die and when you go off to heaven and all the rest of it. Now, I've already spoken about it to a certain extent in various other videos, but he did ask me if I would bring it all together and put it into one video, so I'll try. Now, I've got maybe a little problem because this might drag on a bit, and I try and keep them as short as I can, but it's not all that easy. Now, first of all, I must say that I have to say to you that for the people who are convinced that there's not life after death, when they die, they're going to have a problem, because they go off to somewhere that I don't know much about, but I do know that the people who end up there are not very happy. They're not being tortured or anything, they're just clearly not very happy. Now, I found out about all this. My guides, for some reason, have never really mentioned this to me, but I managed to find out about it through various ways, and one of the ways was I saw some programs where people had got some peculiar sort of radio sets where the radio set scans very quickly up and down a number of channels, and somehow or other that breaks through into an area where there are people. And as far as I'm aware, these are the people who don't realise that they're dead. I think what happens is when somebody dies for whatever reason, they then see their body lying on the ground and they say, I don't know what's going on, but I can't be dead because there's no life after death and I'm still alive. And those poor people end up somewhere where they're often very unhappy, and on these little radio set things where people are recording the people talking, they often say, please help us, we don't know where we are, we're very unhappy here, we want to get out of this area. And they're stuck there because they don't know that they're dead. If they thought that they were dead, an angel would come and help them go away. But because of free will, if you believe that your life doesn't exist after you're dead, then you stay there until you change your mind. So it's important for people who don't think there's life after death that they do realise that life does indeed continue after death. Now, so let's talk about the various ways that you can die and what happens. Let's talk about, first of all, elderly people that are slowly fading through old age or illness or whatever, and generally speaking they're lying in bed, they're too weak to stand up, and the people I've seen in that condition quite often are kind of in two worlds at once. They are able to talk to us, and they seem to be perfectly sort of conscious and aware of the fact that we are there, but quite often they will also be talking to somebody that's come in from the astral realm and is still in the astral realm, and is talking to them also. For instance, when my mother-in-law was in this condition, her late husband came and spoke to her, and she was talking to us one moment, and then she'd turn and look, and she started to talk to her husband. Now he's come to help her at the moment of passing go off to heaven. Okay, now I've got some notes as usual, so please excuse me. Now the next one is people that die through operations. Quite often they're on a operating table or whatever, or they've suddenly become very ill and they suddenly die. Now they quite often will float off up to the ceiling and look down, and they can see their body on a bed, and if it's in a hospital they'll see doctors flapping around them and nurses flying about and machines being done, and they're trying to revive the person. Now if that revival is unsuccessful and the person actually dies, They'll hang about in the operating theatre or whatever for a few minutes, and then, generally speaking, an angel or a relative will come once again and take them off to heaven. So in a way, it's very similar to the first thing I mentioned, the old people dying. Now, you get a similar thing happen in car accidents, or somebody gets shot, or a sudden death of some description, that the person suddenly finds themselves standing. Imagine it's a car accident. The body of the person that was driving or that was in the car may still be in the car, all mangled up, but they find themselves standing outside looking at it all. They see other people stop. They see people trying to get the bodies out and all the rest of it, and they stand there and sort of scratch their head because they can see themselves in the car, but they're obviously still very much alive and standing watching. And then, once again, after a few minutes, someone will come and pick them up and take them off to heaven. The last one I want to mention is the tunnel of light. Now, I've actually been in this tunnel of light, so I know that this exists because I've seen it. Now, what it is, or what I saw anyway, was not a vertical tunnel, but a horizontal tunnel. It would be in yards. What I saw would be 3 or 4 yards wide, perfectly circular, and the most beautiful colours, as if the whole walls were made of coloured, lit up glass. The one I was in is mostly sort of purple in colour, with some reds and blues mixed in with it. Very, very beautiful indeed. And there was an organ playing like a classical piece of music that I didn't recognise, because I was only about 12 at the time. But it was very beautiful, and I was gently sliding along, looking at the walls of this thing, wondering, because I didn't know that this existed. I suddenly found myself in it, and wondering what I was there for. It was so peaceful, it was so beautiful, and eventually I came back to my body. I didn't see the light at the end of the tunnel. I didn't get that far. I came back to my body, and I was really quite sorry to come back, because it was so peaceful in that place. I really was sorry to come back. However, the good news for me was that from that day on, I've never been scared of dying, because I know that you don't die. Now, let's stop there, because that's roughly all I want to keep it as short as I can, and that's roughly an overview of the different ways that you can die. If you drown, for instance, once again, you'll get this horrible choking feeling, and then you could well find yourself going off in the tunnel, or an angel could come and pick you up. It's basically like that. Whatever happens, you will end up in heaven, with the exception, as I mentioned right at the beginning, of those who are convinced that life doesn't exist after death. They go off to somewhere else. But for people who are fairly open to the concept that life continues after death, they will find themselves in heaven. Now, you have to understand that heaven is a multi-level place. Many, 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 many levels. And the default level in the middle is called Summerland. Summerland is like a beautiful park, a huge, endless, beautiful park with benches, with lakes, with trees, with flowers, with birds. It's the most beautiful place. The sky is blue. It's nice and warm. It's very, very beautiful and peaceful. The flowers and things can actually make a sound, like a tinkling sort of sound, and it's really quite remarkable. Now, there is in life something we call the law of mutual attraction. Like attracts like. Now, what that means it actually happens all the time round us here, but it works even more so in heaven. And what that means is that people who are happier with a particular group of people will find themselves only with that group. For instance, if a white person feels more comfortable with just white people, he will find himself with just white people. If the person is black or brown skinned, Arab, Chinese, Native American, whatever he might be, if that person prefers to be with just people like that, he will find himself just with people like that, and he won't see any other people. While you're there, you will very probably meet some of your relatives and loved ones that have passed. If you had relatives that you didn't love, you won't see them. The law of mutual attraction will ensure that they stay away from you. Okay, that's what that basically is like. I will just go on to say that there's hospital areas there for people who died from horrible deaths, very painful and unpleasant deaths for whatever reason. They will go into this hospital area where healers shine lights onto them. Coloured lights come out of the healer's hands and help restore that person. Okay, you've got that sort of thing. There's libraries, there's houses, there's food if you need it. You don't need food there, but people that die come in the first stage from here often feel the need to eat something. They're not allowed to eat meat, but they can eat fruit and stuff. So you can pick an apple off a tree and so on. You can drink water if you want. If you feel that you need a house to sleep in, although you don't need to sleep when you're in heaven, but if you feel the need to sleep, you can have a house with beds in it if you feel the need to, and so on, until you adjust to what it's like to be an eternal spirit. Okay, now that is where you go as a first instance, all of us. From there, you have what's called a life review. Now, this life review can come quickly, or it may take a certain amount of time before you have it, but you will all have a life review. What that means is that you see all of your life passing from at least the moment of your birth, sometimes before the moment of your birth, right up to the moment of your death. You will see everything that you did. Some things will stand out more than others, but you will see everything that you did. And moreover, you feel the emotion of what you were doing, and you feel the emotion of the people that you were affecting. Okay? Now, this life review is actually quite important because it decides where you go after that. Normal, decent people who've not really done very much harm, they've not really done very much good either, they're just normal people, will generally stay in this Summerland area. Nice people who've consciously spent a great deal of their life helping people might possibly go to a slightly higher area where it's even more beautiful. Not necessarily a parkland, it will be different, but just as lovely and peaceful and sunny and bright and so on as the Summerland. Now, we need to talk about hell. Hell is part of the heaven complex. It's not a separate place under the control of demons. It's not a fiery furnace, at least I've never seen it. Heaven is a series of areas that go duller and duller and darker and more cold and more miserable as you go down. Now when you get your life review, only you decide what the end result will be, because you will react to what you see, and you can't hide your emotions. Your emotions are very much to the fore, so you will see and feel exactly what you did to people. You will see and feel exactly the effect that you had on people, the good that you did and the harm that you did. How if you were doing harm to people, you will feel exactly the harm that you caused people, and realize how much you'd hurt people. Now, by the law of mutual attraction, when you see all that, you are automatically drawn to an area commensurate with that emotion, with what you did on earth. If you spent your life just being a mean and nasty sort of person, then you will go to a certain level. If you'd spent your life being as horrible as you possibly could, a genuine sort of psychopath, and I understand that about 5% of the population are true psychopaths. These are people with no consciousness, that's not quite the right word, but no emotion, no remorse, no regret for what they did. They just do what they do without any thought of whether they should be doing it, whether they're causing harm to people. Those people will go down to a very deep level, and I've spoken about many of these places in other videos. I suppose I ought to go through them again, really. Yeah, I'll talk to you very quickly, although I've mentioned it before, about a lonely man that I saw some years ago. I was asked to go and see this man, and he was in a wooden hut. And when I opened the door and walked in, he was sitting in a corner, leaning against the wall. It was just a dirt floor. Outside, the light was quite grey and horrible. There was no trees. There was just barren landscape, a bit like you imagine the moon to be. And he was sitting in the corner, and I said to him, like, what are you doing here? And he said, I don't know. He said, I found myself here and I can't go away. And I said to him, well, what were you like when you were on earth? He said, well, I wasn't a bad person, but I just was someone who wanted to be on their own. I never mixed with people. So you can see, he didn't want to mix with people. He didn't want to share his life with anybody. So he found himself in a place where he's on his own once again. Now, he told me that angels come to try and cheer him up and encourage him to move on, but he tells them to go away because the angels were so bright that they frightened him. And he said to me that I wasn't very bright, so I didn't frighten him. Okay. Anyway, that's just one small example. There are other cases where people are sitting and they're covered with like dirt and tar and stuff, and they're trying to pull it all off, but they can't pull it all off. And as I mentioned before, there's this most deep dark place that I ever went to, where it looked like a scene out of one of the Harry Potter films, when Harry and Dumbledore go somewhere to find a Horcrux that Lord Voldemort had left in the middle of a lake. If you've seen the film, it was very similar to that, although I saw it many years before J.K. Rowling wrote about it. And I found myself on this rock in the middle of this dark lake. It was a huge dark cave. It was very dark inside. There was no light at all, but I could see nevertheless. And this rock was all wet and slimy. Now, in the water, it was absolutely full of people all fighting each other to try and get out of the water and onto the rock. And these people were battling and fighting with each other, and when one of them managed to climb onto the rock and sit down and say, "Oh, I'm out of that horrible water," somebody would grab hold of them and would pull them back in the water to try and take their place. And there was this seething mass of humanity all battling to get onto this rock. And now what these people had done to deserve that, I don't know, but it was really, really horrible. Now, I'm only repeating really what I've already said in other things. There are many, many levels, and there's many, many experiences. Everything that you can consider to be not nice, there's a level 4. Okay. Now, once again, I've never seen this burning pit, so I don't know where that concept comes from, and my wife, who's a medium, has never seen it either. Now, the higher levels, there's not a great deal to talk about because it's an area. There are once again many, many areas, and all I can really tell you about them is that they are for people who want to learn spirituality, want to be nicer people, want to be to progress towards God, and will gradually move from one area to another, to another, to another, as they improve themselves. And these areas are a bit difficult to describe because you're getting more and more remote from anything that we have round here, around us. Now, the lower areas are quite simple because they look very much like things we can associate with. But as you go further and further towards spirituality, so you gradually lose your sense of your connection with the earth, should I say. It becomes different. You become a being of light in a world of light. I forgot to say something that's actually quite important, that you are all members of what are called oversouls. There are a large number of oversouls, and you'll be a member of one of them. And one of the first things you'll see when you go off to heaven is that you will rejoin this oversoul. Now, you don't have to stay with that oversoul. You can go to another one if you want, which would have different aims and objectives, or you can stay with the one that you have. Now, in that oversoul will be certain members of your family. There will be certain friends that you might have had. There will be a number of people that you've never seen before who are nevertheless members of your oversoul, and you all progress together as a group. You still retain your individuality at this point, but you gradually move towards perfection, and you're taught by angels about spirituality. They'll come and hold classes, and your oversoul group, those that are interested, will sit round while an angel explains things to you, and you gradually learn like that. Then you're encouraged to put that into practice by sending peaceful and loving thoughts down to people here, and it goes on like that. And gradually, as you get higher and higher, oversouls join together, and you gradually lose your sense of individuality, and you, as I mentioned earlier, you become more a being of light in a world of light, which is why it's so difficult to describe, because there's not much actually to talk about. It's a brilliant experience, because as you go towards perfection, and please don't think I'm anywhere near it, but as you go towards perfection, so bliss, joy, happiness becomes part of that, and you become supremely happy, which is our true destiny, to be beautifully happy people. So that's about all I can really say. We're all going to die one day. I've tried to explain the different ways that we will die. We're all going to go to heaven. From there, we're sorted out. We sort ourselves out as to whether we stay in this Summerland or progress upwards, or go down to one of the levels of hell. Now, the people that are in hell don't have to stay there. They will stay there until they no longer want to be there. When they outgrow that experience of being a nasty person, then, because I didn't really explain fully all of it, apart from the man that was all on his own, those people who are nasty and have done bad things, they will be in areas where they can do those same bad things to other people and in turn have them done to them. Child rapists, or rapists generally, for instance, will be in an area where they can try and rape other people, or they can in turn be raped themselves, if you can understand what I'm trying to say. And that goes on until people get fed up with it, and then angels gradually help them back towards the light. And our ultimate destiny is to become archangels, which I've already mentioned in another video. And we go further on and on and on towards perfection, and one day we disappear into the Godhead, which is where we came from in the first place. Okay, I don't know if what I've said makes sense, whether you enjoyed what I've said. I was asked to explain this. I've done my best, and I can do no more. Okay, thank you very much for listening to me. Bye.